going to be delivering a presentation all about neurodiversity. So Matt, I will hand over to you.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. First off, I just want to say thank you to the team for putting on such an amazing event today. It's so great to see so many people turning out for these sorts of conferences. There's so much information shared, and I'm beyond privileged to be here, to be honest. I just want to take a moment. I don't know if you're anything like me. I'm a very fidgety person. So if you've not had a chance to today, just take a second to have a bit of a stretch, a bit of a move around, you know, all those sorts of things, sort of shake off the focusing too much on the talks. There's never any pressure in my presentations about moving around as well. That's kind of part of being neurodiverse, right? So before I get started, let me just introduce myself if I can.
There is no sound, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, I am a non-functional test analyst working in rail, so doing a little bit of performance testing, doing a little bit of reliability testing. I've not yet been within the test industry for 2 years, but I am a career changer. So I came from operations and finance. I was working in operations for about 10 years. And then I decided to switch over into tech because I needed something that would feed my brain a little bit more, because I was a bit more of a puzzler. I wanted to pull things apart. I wanted to understand things a little bit more, and testing just really spoke to me that way. I'm also a neurodiversity advocate. So I personally have ADHD. I was only diagnosed a couple of years ago. So I spent my entire life wondering why my brain was different from everyone else's and why work felt a little bit more difficult. And it was only post-diagnosis that I really realized just how great my brain was, for one, but also how I needed to have some support in order to perform really well in my work day to day. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I do these presentations. I'm also non-binary and I use they, them pronouns. So without further ado, what is neurodiversity? So I imagine you've probably heard about neurodiversity before. It's turned into a little bit of a buzzword. But before we get started, just for definitions, neurodiversity talks about the range of differences in individual brain function and behavioral traits across the human population. So it's very much a group term. And then you have neurodiverse. So this would be displaying or characterized by other neurologically atypical patterns. So you would say that someone is a neurodiverse person. So you wouldn't say someone has neurodiversity. You can say that a group of people has neurodiversity, but a person is neurodiverse. What comes under neurodiversity? There's a whole heap of different conditions that come under neurodiversity. This is just a few of them. There's some here that I haven't even listed. You've probably heard of a lot of the more common ones, so autism, ADHD, dyscalculia, dyslexia, Tourette's, but then there's other ones that maybe are not so thought of as neurodiversity, so stuff like obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, intellectual disability. So anything that affects your way of intaking information, processing the world, your way of your brain functioning. And I do want to make a big point about neurodiversity. Someone who is neurodiverse is not any worse or better than someone who is neurotypical. Everyone's brains are different. Everyone's brains work differently. A neurotypical person can have the same sort of traits as a neurodiverse person. That doesn't disqualify a neurodiversity diagnosis. However, someone who is neurodiverse will struggle a lot more intensely with things. And there is a range, depending on the person. And I want to make that a very important note that each person's experience with their own brain is individual. So one autistic person is not like another autistic person, which is very important to keep in mind. Why is it important that we're talking about it? It's shown at the moment that 1 in 7 people in the UK are neurodiverse. And it is very likely that number is actually higher than that, because there are multiple barriers to getting diagnoses. A lot of them are, unfortunately, the state of the NHS. You may go into a GP appointment and say, look, these are the things I really struggle with. And unfortunately, if you don't have an understanding GP, you may be dismissed, especially if you're a bit older and you're going in and you're saying, look, I've struggled with these my entire life. And you have a GP that goes, well, what's the point of getting diagnosed? There is always a point in getting diagnosed. There is always a point in understanding your own brain, because different brains have different strengths. Different brains have different ways of working. And yes, there may be things that you might need support with, but there are things that you might be able to do really, really well that maybe your neurotypical colleagues might not be able to do as quickly. And that's why it's really important to talk about it. And also, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I don't know anyone who's neurodiverse, I don't know anyone who's autistic or has ADHD or dyslexia, it is very likely that your team is already neurodiverse. It may be that someone hasn't disclosed that they have a diagnosis. It may be that they don't feel comfortable discussing this at work, that they don't want to discuss it at work. It could also be that maybe they've not yet discovered why their brain works differently. So maybe they've not had someone say to them, look, have you looked into ADHD? Have you looked into dyscalculia? It could also be someone, there's loads of different reasons, but it is very likely that you already work with neurodiverse people. Now, a very important thing is that multiple studies, and this list is pulled from the Sparta Global Equal Tech Report in 2023, where they studied neurodiversity at work and the strengths that people bring. And now in that study, these were the top 10 strengths that were brought to work across all neurodiverse conditions. These are very applicable to what we do in testing. But you'll see higher rates of computational thinking, questioning the how, different levels of imagination, different levels of innovation and intuition. Now, this can be from an entire lifetime spent trying to keep up, trying to cope with systems that were not built for neurodiverse brains. People get very good at trying to keep up, and so coming up with different ways of doing things. And that innovation and intuition can be brought to work. Drawing connections, seeing patterns, observational skills, so picking up on things that maybe other people didn't see. This can come from a sensory aspect, or this can come from a pattern recognition aspect as well. Neurodiverse people are shown to be adaptable as well. They can take to changes in environments. They can, and again, this completely depends on the individual and the support available. You may have heard of hyperfocus before. So someone with ADHD may be able to use their hyperfocus at work, and within a 4-hour period get 40 to 60% more work done than maybe their neurotypical colleague could get done in the same time. It's also shown that neurodiverse people have a wider depth of thinking as well. So on that note, what about testing? How does that apply to testing? So when we're looking at testing as a whole, when we're looking at testing a system, as we all know, the importance of testing is having deep, enriched tests that are pulling out issues that maybe were not thought of before, maybe looking at the system, understanding it a lot more. There are also very specific challenges that can be faced as well, such as communication issues within teams, dealing with time constraints, test data management, dealing with very quick changes to both the software, the test environments, resources available, looking at missing documentation, and then diversity in testing environments. Now, this is not just from the actual testing environment, but this is also looking at the diversity in thinking within the testing teams. So when your team is neurodiverse, when you have a neurodiverse team, some of the ways that can benefit is you're more likely to have more honest, transparent, and upfront communication. Now, that can probably be a little bit difficult to adjust to at first, but if you have someone that maybe is not so willing to apply society's rules and will just say it exactly how it is, you're going to get to the problem quicker. You're going to get to the issues quicker. Neurodiverse people can be more detail orientated and organized. They can see little things that maybe got missed. They can pick up tiny little errors from working very closely with the code. Again, a diverse range of experience and thinking styles can come up as well. Creative solutions to tough problems. So again, this comes from living a life where they're having to fit into very neurotypical symptoms, means that, neurotypical systems. It means fitting in, finding ways to make it work for them and having that really creative way of thinking and moving through problems. And that can be applied to work as well and testing. Neurodiverse people have been shown to be focused and dedicated, which is what's needed to get to the core of issues within testing. And also higher levels of pattern recognition and abstraction. So being able to look at the system as an entire whole and see where some of these issues are coming up, see some of the patterns that maybe would get missed if, maybe not missed, but maybe understand it at a deeper level. So an important point to make here is that you can only make use of the benefits of your neurodiverse team members by making sure that your team and your organization is inclusive, safe, and supportive. So it is very important to look at an organization as a whole and how you can take steps to make your space more inclusive, make it more supportive, because otherwise there are real risks of higher rates of burnout, as well as mental health issues, physical health issues. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we go further along. But I'd like to talk a little bit about adjustments at work. Now, adjustments can be the difference between someone succeeding at work or someone getting a year in and being like, this is too difficult, I can't do this anymore. To give you a bit of a personal story, one of the adjustments that works really well for me, and I imagine works well for quite a lot of people, is being able to, in meetings, especially longer meetings, take regular breaks, even just 5 minutes, so that I can get up, walk around, shake things off a little bit. Also as well, within my team, it's very well set up that I can sit there and I can fidget if I need to. So I will have a fidget toy in my pocket whilst we're watching presentations. And that is the one way that I can really ensure that my brain is taking in every piece of information that is being fed. Because if I'm not fidgeting, I'm not paying attention. That's just the way that my brain works. So adjustments are completely individual, much the same as two neurodivergent people are completely different. What this means is that you can't make a packet of adjustments that are just like, look, these are our Tourette's adjustments. These are our dyslexia adjustments. These are our autism adjustments. It doesn't work like that. What should happen instead is that when you have someone join your team, whether they're neurodiverse or whether they're neurotypical, there should always be an open discussion of what do you need to succeed at work? What are the things that are the difference between you being comfortable and safe to do your work? What will take away your mental load at work so that you can actually focus on what you're doing and present your best self at work? And continuing to have those conversations over time. Because if you set up an adjustment initially it might work really well for the first 3 months whilst you're still in that hyped up state of a very new job. But it might not work sort of 6 to 12 months later. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because unfortunately I've talked a little bit too much and I'm running out of time. But these are some examples of adjustments. Please feel free to come up to me afterwards and ask some more. I also have some resources at the end about types of adjustments that can be offered. There's also lots of resources online of adjustments, and they can be make or break within teams. Not offering adjustments is dangerous. It can mean that people are not being able to perform at work. Now, I'm going to rush through this a little bit, and again, it's my fault for talking too much. But another thing is it's all well and good offering adjustments. But if you are not looking at the culture within your organization, people are not going to feel psychologically safe at work. They're not going to feel like they belong at work. It's all well and good saying to someone, sure, you can sit in a meeting with headphones if background noise is too stimulating. But then if you have a team that is judgmental, that is staring at them throughout, if that person is then made to feel singled out for their adjustments, they're not going to feel safe at work, which means they're not going to use their adjustments, which leads to burnout. By looking at the culture, you can change that. You can go, right, we are having a team that allows these adjustments and we are making everyone feel welcome. And so part of that is trying to understand and mitigate the unconscious bias and microaggressions. So, not making some of the awful jokes about autism and ADHD that we've all heard about, the little boys that are just jumping off the walls and stuff like that. You can really improve that by providing training on different ways to communicate, on how to interview people that are coming into your organization, and also increasing awareness and sharing resources across your organization. Now, there are big benefits here, right? It's been shown again and again that organizations that put these processes in place have seen a drastically reduced employee turnover. So JP Morgan is very well known for their neurodiversity programs that they've put in place. And they have seen a reduction, I think it's of 60% in employee turnover within their teams. They've also seen lower rates of burnout within their teams. They've also seen elevated rates of productivity, both within the individual and within the teams. People are more engaged at work. They're more willing to show up and talk out and actually do their best at work. And a very important note is that you're much more likely to attract the next generation of talent if you are building these inclusive processes. Because let's be honest, the next generation is more understanding of themselves than ever before. There's a statement that I do not agree with, which is that ADHD and autism is increasing. It's not that. It's the research has got better, the understanding has got better, and the diagnostic processes have got better. What that now means is that the next generation of people that are coming up understand themselves better. And if they are looking at companies and they are looking to see, are they supportive to neurodiverse people? If they're not, we're going somewhere else. We're taking our talent somewhere else, because we can't show up each day if we're not supported at work. So yeah, with that, that's my presentation. So yeah, I have a link to some resources here. This also includes my LinkedIn as well, if you'd like to connect. There's some research from Birkbank, also Neurodiversity in Business, do some great research as well, which is all on here. And any questions, please just grab me at any point, and because I don't know how much time we've got left. Oh, we've got 5 minutes left for questions. But thank you so much, everyone.
So can I please go first? Thank you very much for bringing this up. And I have a very practical question to you, as being an older person and working with older people mostly. If you were to look at the person, what would be the first sign for you to recognize that they're neurodiverse or that they're neurotypical? How
So-
would, just on the first glance, meeting somebody, making sure that they are accommodated and made feel comfortable, whether it's a customer, whether it's a new colleague, whether it's just an interviewee, what would be the first sign to look at?
So my personal opinion with this is that you can never make assumptions about whether someone is neurotypical or neurodiverse by how they present. Because me, in my own experience, I got very good at masking. People didn't realize about my ADHD traits when I was speaking to someone the first time. There are also people who, other neurodiverse people are also very good at masking their traits, both from a customer perspective or a team perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't then still make accommodations, but you should never make assumptions about whether someone is neurodiverse or not. What that then means is that by building an all over inclusive process, so for example, redesigning interviews to be inclusive for neurodiverse people, rather than applying that just for someone who has declared they're neurodiverse and applying it for everyone within the interview process, that takes the pressure off the neurodiverse person to disclose their own status, because they may not be comfortable with that. They may not be ready to disclose it. They may have had negative experiences before. So my advice is that rather than making assumptions about the person, build the processes to support neurodiverse people and then apply and make them available for everyone. Make the processes available to everyone, because you don't know who is neurodiverse and you can never make assumptions over who is and who isn't, unless someone tells you very specifically that they are. I hope that helps.
Thank you. That does.
You mentioned about career changer. Me too. So it's out of curiosity. Why testing?
So funnily enough, I stumbled into testing. So when I was looking at career changing, I didn't really know what I wanted to get into, but I knew very much that I hadn't really enjoyed anything that I'd done in operations before. There was nothing that really had me engaged at work. So what I did was I went back and looked over my interests whilst I was younger. And oh my God, I'm going to age myself here a little bit. I went back to my teen years where I taught myself how to make HTML pages or Neopets at the time. I don't know whether anyone's heard of that. When I was 14 years old, and it was enough of a spark that came back to me that I was like, look, okay, I don't know exactly what I want to do. I'm going to go in, I'm going to get a general computer science degree and I'm going to work it out in the meantime. Ironically, I'm still doing my degree at the moment because I'm doing it part-time. And then in the meantime, I just sort of stumbled into software testing, because as I explored more and more into tech, I realized that my brain, it just has that natural thing of I just want to investigate, I just want to pull things apart, I just want to understand things, and that leads really well into testing. So I never retrained specifically to go into testing. I just kind of followed my passions, followed the things that were going to keep me engaged at work, and I ended up in testing. Yeah.
So I guess with kind of context switching is like really common at the moment, like working from home or even in the office, and you've got kind of Slack notifications pinging back and forth and emails and so on and so forth. I sometimes, mute the notifications because it's quite distracting, or like removing the sound as well from the notification noise. Are there any kind of tips that you use day to day, or ways do you get distracted quite easily, and then do you have ways to kind of overcome that?
Yeah, so I also struggle quite a lot with switching. Like if I'm in a focus moment and I get distracted, it can take me anywhere up to half an hour to get back on task. Now, I took a couple of steps with this when I first started. When I very first started, and it fully depends on your relationship with your manager, with your team. I had a very open discussion with my manager and I said, look, I can't do interruptions when I need to do focus work, because if you want me to work, if you want me to produce quality work, it's not going to happen. So much the same as what you do, I set up do not disturb periods. I I put things in the calendar. I also use a great app called Clockify, which it does not block notifications, but what it does is it has a very visual timer in the corner so that I focus for my set period of time and I can switch into that focus mode. But then I also know that I'm not going to overrun with the focus and then all of a sudden get to 6 o'clock, have not checked any of my emails, my team messages, anything else, and suddenly find something that's very urgent. So again, it is very much making use of that do not disturb. It's having discussions with team members and being like, look, if it is really urgent, we can set up other forms of communication, but actually discussing about what is and isn't urgent at work. Something that I used to do, but I'm not organized enough with it because it depends on the day, is I used to schedule chunks of time as well. So I used to have like between 2 and 4 as a no meeting, no call time, and it was just working on, you know, dedicated work. Unfortunately, my brain doesn't do schedules for longer than a month or so, so it didn't go very well. But yeah, I definitely recommend using do not disturb mode, advocating for what you need. So if you have a good relationship with your manager, chat with them and say, look, this interrupts my work. If you want me to do my best work, is it possible to completely block out time in my calendar? And then also looking at what you prioritize as an emergency within the team. I hope that helps.
Fantastic. We'll give Maddie one more round of applause.